Bueno, Veronika is the director of the collections of the Ambras castle in Innsbruck, which is also part of the museum union of the Kunsthistorisches Museum. She studied history of art, and from 1992 to 2010, she was curator and vice director of the Ambras castle. She has been responsible for the conception and organization of numerous exhibitions and for the editorship of the respective exhibition catalogues, most of them focusing on the Habsburg court culture in the 16th century and on the collections of Archduke Ferdinand II at Ambras. She is also lecturer of museology at the University of Innsbruck. Among her exhibitions, I want to mention only 3 of them. One in 2005 on the festivals of the Habsburgs in the Renaissance period with the title We Are Heroes. Then in 2010, an exhibition related to the festival book of Archduke Ferdinand II's wedding with Anna Katharina Gonzaga in 1582. And in 2017, she curated a very important exhibition on the anniversary of 450 years of Archduke Ferdinand II as ruler in Tyrol. And she also published a lot of articles on festive culture, and the last ones are one in 2015, edited by, among others, Anna Maria Testaverde, who is present here, with the title Elements of Power in Court Festivals of the Habsburg Emperors in the 16th Century, and another one on the tournaments at the court of Archduke Ferdinand II. And today she will talk about another wedding in Innsbruck from the 16th century, the Kolowrat wedding in Innsbruck, which she wants to bring to life again with the help of Nicoletta next year.
Thank you very much, Andrea, for the introduction. It's a great pleasure for me to participate in this highly interesting workshop. Thank you, Carmen and Rudy, for the kind invitation, and also Andrea for the kind invitation to Malaga. In my paper, I would like to present a court festival from the late 16th century that is worth looking on in the context of digital perspectives. It will be part of the digital exhibition ART-ES, and it is one of the black and white pages which Nicoletta showed us before. In 1580, from 14th to 16th February, a wedding took place in Innsbruck, the princely residence of the sovereign of Tyrol, the Habsburg Archduke Ferdinand II. Bride and groom were Johann Lipstański von Kolowrat, a chamberlain of Ferdinand II, and Katharina Bayersberg, an offspring of a wealthy Tyrolean family. Archduke Ferdinand II used the occasion to stage a number of spectacular tournaments which exceeded the couple's social ranking in splendor. In fact, it resembled a veritable court festival in which he himself played an important role. The tournaments were based on a complicated program conceived by the Archduke in persona and oriented around his own ideal qualities, abilities, and deeds. The parades prior to the tournaments are documented in magnificently colored copperplate engravings. Originally, these engravings belonged to the Kunstkammer of Archduke Ferdinand in Ambras Castle. They are recorded in the inventory of estate of 1596 as taking the form of 2 books and 1 scroll. Today they are preserved, partly bound and partly loose, at 3 different places. One at Ambras Castle, which I will refer to, one in Munich in the Bayerische Staatsbibliothek, and the third one at Breschnitz Castle in the Czech Republic. However, the exceptionally large format of the individual pages that were glued together, up to 3 meters, of the Ambras copy suggests that they were originally conceived as the mentioned scroll. In my paper, I will refer, of course, to the copy that has been preserved at Ambras Castle. The whole of the copyright is therefore the KHM Museumsverband. In contrast to Freidal, the very well-known tournament book of Emperor Maximilian I, where the jousters are depicted in combat, all the pictures of our Kolowrat wedding show the formal entry into the tilt yard by means of a sumptuous parade. There is not a single charge or combat to be seen. Of particular importance for us is that the engravings are labeled with printed inscriptions and that there are so-called cartels, letters of challenge, which describe the content, the rules, and the regulations of the tournament. This is the most important source and an important tool for the analysis and interpretation of the depicted scenes. We read and see a, quote, wahrhafte Beschreibung und Abkontrafektung, a true description and illustration of the tournaments that took place in 1580 in Innsbruck in honor of the bridal couple. The tilt yard is described as decorated with green arches, while the participants passed by on, quote, wondrous animals and triumphal chariots, end of quote. Further, the text identifies Ferdinand as the author of the program. He is said to have, quote, developed the ideas himself after much thought, and that he devised and directed, quote, experienced painters, sculptors, and other artists, end of quote, to produce a sophisticated princely quintain tournament, a melee, and a foot combat. It is the artist who tells this story in the first person. It was me, Sigmund Elsässer, who executed the engravings, end of quote. And further, that they were printed by Hans Bauer. There were staged 3 parades. The first was a quintain tournament, a Ringelrennen, in 3 sets. The second, on the 15th February, a melee, a Freiturnier, in 9 sets. And on the third day, there were held 13 individual combats, Fußturnier. The printed cartels, which were bound together with the engravings, inform us in detail. I quote, wir Ferdinand Erzherzog von Österreich, etc. We, Ferdinand, Archduke of Austria, etc., by the grace of God, proclaim that there will be a tournament, and so on and so on. The proclamation is followed by the rules and regulations for the quintain tournament. Folgen hernach die Artikel des Ringrennens. It is set out in 37 articles that list everything from the disguises worn by the participants to the prizes they could win at the end. The quintain tournament was one of the most elaborate tournaments of the Kolowrat wedding celebrations. The participants were noblemen from the court of Archduke Ferdinand in Innsbruck. They all were disguised, representing antique deities and heroes, the 4 seasons and the 4 elements, Archduke Ferdinand himself participated in the role of Jupiter. Here we see Charles Schurff von Schönwerth, courtmaster of the chase, leading the procession on horseback, representing Mercury, the messenger of the gods, and the intermediary between heaven and earth. Following behind are two archers on foot and Apollo, who introduces Duke Ott Heinrich of Braunschweig and Lüneburg, riding on a leopard. According to the inscription, he embodies the season spring. The two-wheeled chariot, drawn by two unicorns, is steered by a young lady. On the chariot, we also see the three zodiac signs that are associated with spring: Aries, Taurus, and Gemini. Next, we see the season of summer. Jaroslav of Kolowrat, brother of the groom, represents Ceres, the goddess of fertility and wealth, riding on a crocodile. The chariot is drawn by oxen. And here Count Sternberg is riding on an elephant, representing Saturn. Holding the hourglasses, he is depicted as Father Time. The chariot is drawn by tame wild boars. We will take a look on the elements now. Riding on a rhinoceros, we see the personification of Mother Earth, Cybele, the great mother of the gods. She's the universal mother of not only the gods, but also of all humans, animals, and plant life. The inscription mentions that Freiherr von Waldburg represents the goddess. He is wearing women's clothes, as it was usual at this time. The element of water is, hardly surprising, represented by Neptune, the god of the sea, riding on the seahorse Arion. The chariot with Triton on its top, blowing his seashell trumpet, is drawn by Nereids. Here we have a nice detail with crawfish, sea snails, and turtles, sea turtles, in the middle of their faces. So this is the element fire. The giants who possessed only one eye set in the middle of their forehead are representing the Cyclops who worked at Mount Etna with Vulcan, the god of fire and metalworking. That's why they are associated with the element fire too. The nobleman from Archduke Ferdinand's court, representing this mythological figure, is riding on a three-headed monstrous watchdog of the underworld, Cerberus. The chariot is drawn by Furies. And on we go with antique mythology. The second-born son of Archduke Ferdinand II and his first morganatic wife, Philippine Welser, Karl of Burgau, represents Hercules riding on a seven-headed hydra. And Archduke Ferdinand himself appears in the third set as Jupiter, the father of the gods, and father of Hercules as well, on a chariot with baldachin, decorated with costly gold leaf and drawn by eagles. We are left in no doubt that the Habsburg ruler derives his power and authority directly from Jupiter, while also claiming the deity's virtues as his own. By having his son Karl von Burgau appear as Hercules, Ferdinand is also referencing his own family situation. Karl's mother, Philippine Welser, was an offspring of the mercantile family of the Welser in Augsburg. That is why he had been excluded from the princely succession. The differences of rank seem to be transposed to a mythical level. Karl represents the greatest of the classical heroes, who earned his place in heaven through his deeds and not through his origin, a role he could only play in the fictitious setting of a court festival being directed by his own father. The oval medallions above are showing Philemon and Baucis. They were considered the ideal couple of Greek mythology and are to be understood as an allusion for the future happiness of the bridegroom. Also depicted are the assembly of the gods and the battle of the gods against the Titans. In addition to these rather well-known scenes, the Kolowrat wedding also contains some other, no less spectacular episodes. Here, Count Wilhelm von Zimmern riding in a boat-shaped float, followed by another one in the form of the Strophaete Island, home of the feared harpies, the winged beasts with female features. Here a detail of the island. The special attraction was that fireworks were lit on the float to give the appearance of cannons being fired directly from the castle. By the way, this is the only depiction showing a combat, a duel combat. In the foreground, we see two men fighting with daggers. And even Aeneas' galley boasted a pyrotechnic effect. Fire and smoke billowed from a mask on the bow. Venus and Cupid riding in a shell-shaped chariot is associated with the above-shown Aeneas setting too. The storyline of this act is set out in the cartel. The goddess Fame informs Aeneas, who has just made landfall in Italy, that a great tournament is being held at Innsbruck, at which he and many other heroes then appear. Venus too insists on accompanying her son Cupid to the wedding tournament in Innsbruck. The inscription indicates that the shell is being pulled by two men hiding in the fish bodies. The procession vehicle, in the shape of a shell, is most probably made of easily manufacturable, theater-typical decorative materials, such as wood or papier-mâché. The cartel tells us that the following melee, Beauty and Virtue, defended the bride. The jousters appear in different disguises. Among others, Karl Schurf as Odysseus, enchained by Circe. And finally, different nations, fraternities, and professions were pitted against each other in 13 individual combats, enacted as so-called Klagen, lawsuits. Each plaintiff appeared before the judges to make his case. There were, for example, the hunter's lawsuit, der Jägerklag, or the Moor's lawsuit, die Mohrenklage, just to mention two of them. And the judges then decided the rules of the combat in form of Antwort, answer, and handed down a verdict, a Urteil, the judgment. From all that we have seen here, it should be clear now. The depictions do not reflect the reality on the parades, but are in their own way virtual, partly fact and partly fiction? Or can you imagine real eagles drawing a chariot, living leopards crossing the city with the soundless paws of a cat? Real crocodiles, furies, giants, and others being part of the spectacle? Of course not. We know that in the reality of the event, draught animals like donkeys and horses and even humans dressed up as animals did this job. Here again, the Venus boat. The inscription here reads as, I quote, "Here come two big fish with silver scales. Inside are two men. They pulled a silvered seashell." Kommen zwei große Fisch mit silbernen Schuppen, darinnen zwei Mann, die haben ein versilberte Muschel gezogen. Nevertheless, the depictions give an impression of the reality, not at least by their arrangement on a scroll. Scrolls were already considered old-fashioned at this time. However, the choice of this classicizing medium reflects also the classical content of the formal parade. It is the linear additive sequence of events combining individual pictures to create a coherent image of an animated pageant that allows viewers to experience it both in space and in time. By their very nature, images and texts conserve the ephemeral festival, preserving its meaning and import for posterity. And today, we, the posterity, are interested now in bringing the contents alive. There are many ideas to animate and digitize the Kolowrat wedding for the digital exhibition of ART-ES. We could make the parade move, for example. But not as simple as my example shows. The Kolowrat wedding seems to be predestined to become a movie. The tilt yard could be graphically recreated. We know its original location in Innsbruck. There could be the sound of the timpani and trumpets, pipes and drummers. Archduke Ferdinand II and the painter Sigmund Elsässer could appear as storytellers. The images of the Kolowrat wedding could gradually disappear and be replaced by images of real existing portraits, lances, harnesses, and other tournament items preserved at Ambras Castle. One idea is to look through the pictures like an X-ray machine. In this way, the hidden can be made visible. Men dressed up as women, or humans, animals, or machines drawing chariots that might look like this. Speech bubbles could comment the scenery and so on. To conclude, in view of the fact that the Kolowrat wedding has been preserved in copper engravings and texts, the content can be easily reconstructed. The scenes provide enough inspiration for animation specialists. Illustrated objects can be cross-faded by real objects. From the point of view of conservation, graphics as our object are among the most fragile objects in museums. They need to be protected from light and permanent exhibition. An animated reconstruction, be it on the website or on other devices as apps, audio guides, or touchscreens, allows to delve deep into the world of 16th century tournaments without having to expose and strain the original. In my opinion, therein lies the future of exhibition and museum educational service. Around the middle of the 16th century, tournaments like this, with a storyline or a framework plot, became very popular. Archduke Ferdinand was a devoted patron of this form of princely representation. We have to prove that we are worth his heritage by using all the creativity the 21st century is offering to us. Thank you very much.